Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for another video. Now today, I'm going to be talking about Stephen Tucker because this is another deep dive, which frankly has become the most popular video series I've ever done on this channel. So for people that have been feeding back, saying how much they like it, thank you very much. The idea is simple. I'm going to do a deep dive into a particular creator, into a particular production company, into something that's happened within the magic industry. I'm going to talk through what happened. We're going to take a deep dive, and then we're going to see what lessons we can actually learn from doing a deep dive into that particular person or that particular company. And today, this is probably one of the most requested videos since I started this series. I'm going to be doing the rise, the reign, and the disappearance of Stephen Tucker. Now, here's the thing, right? Stephen Tucker is a man who quietly shaped close-up magic for more than 40 years. But the thing about Stephen Tucker is he wasn't loud. He didn't chase fame. But if you've ever done a packet trick or read something like Pabula, or opened a dealer envelope with a set of typed instructions, you've probably touched something that Stephen Tucker has built. He was everywhere, and then one day he was gone. No announcements, no retirement, no tribute tour. He just disappeared. Now, this was very strange because for 40 years, Stephen Tucker was so prolific. He was so involved in the magic community. I've talked on this channel before about my early years going to the Blackpool Magic Convention. One of my favourite things to do was to go check out Stephen Tucker's dealer stand, because this is back before everything was in snazzy boxes and everything was packaged to perfection. I would go over to Stephen Tucker's dealer booth and it would just literally be a load of see-through bags with typed instructions inside them and the simplest gimmick. But you would watch him demonstrate the trick, you would be absolutely blown away, and then you would take this and you would learn it and you would absolutely not be disappointed. He had a simple way of giving a few gaffed cards and creating an incredible routine. I'll never forget, one of my favourite tricks of all time is a matrix, and I watched Stephen Tucker do it and it blew me away. He put a glove on his hand to prevent sleight of hand, right? And I remember going over to his booth, and he would literally with one hand, he would have the 4 coins on the table. He would drop the cards onto the 4 coins, and then he'd do a matrix one-handed. It was amazing. And the gimmick was he had a magnet in the glove around about there, kind of in the back of the finger. And it was incredible. It was just so workable. And that's the thing about Stephen Tucker's material. It was workable. It was no frills, no fancy packaging, but dear Lord, it worked. And I've been saying for the last few years on this channel, where has Stephen Tucker gone? What has happened? I've actually tried several times to reach out to Stephen Tucker to do an interview, but everyone I speak to, nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows where he's gone. So we're going to do a deep dive into this. This is the story of Stephen Tucker, the rise, the reign, and the slow but deliberate disappearance of one of Britain's most prolific magic minds. Okay, as normal with this sort of thing, we're going to be breaking it down, okay? Step by step, we're going to be breaking it down and talk on the way about the lessons we can learn from Stephen Tucker. So chapter 1 is the origins. Now, Stephen Tucker was born in England on April the 22nd, 1958. His introduction to magic came when he saw a magician performing at his dad's factory Christmas party, and from that moment, he was hooked. Now, his father was no slouch either. He knew a few stacked deck tricks, and that very early exposure helped Stephen develop a lifelong fascination with method and structure. Now, he then went on to grammar school in Liverpool, and something very important happened when he was at grammar school. He met another young magician, David Britland, a friendship that would define both of their creative paths. Britland introduced him to I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Manhattan Magic Circle of Liverpool. Now, it's there that Stephen Tucker met people like Bob Austin and Joe Dignam, 2 magicians, brilliant minds who inspired his early development. In fact, Stephen Tucker went on many, many years later to write the ultimate magic book all about Bob Austin. But we'll get to that a little bit later on. Now, by the 1970s, Tucker, Britland, and John Brown were producing tiny close-up magazine called Talon. Tiny close-up magazine. You probably don't know it. You probably never heard of it. It's very unlikely you remember it. It was photocopied, hand-stapled, and written on a typewriter. It was a pure passion project. But what's important is that was Stephen Tucker's first foray into publishing, and it revealed something about him that would never change. He wasn't content to just perform magic. He wanted to document it. And throughout this video, you're going to actually see that. Now, the first lesson we can learn from this first chapter is the best way to learn magic is to write about it. When you teach others, you refine your own understanding. I'll be honest with you, I have become a better magician, in my opinion, since I actually started kind of going out quite regularly and creating magic and lecturing magic and talking to people about magic and teaching magic. It has absolutely made me a better magician. And from the early days, like I said, Stephen Tucker showed that he wasn't just wanting to perform magic, and it was something more important for him. Okay, so let's talk about Chapter 2. Chapter 2, we'll call it Spellbinder, a Movement in Print. Because you see, in 1981, Stephen Tucker launched his own magazine called Spellbinder. It ran for 36 issues, plus 3 specials. That's over 865 pages of original working close-up material, and almost all of it was edited, typeset, illustrated, and mailed by Stephen himself. Spellbinder wasn't glossy, it wasn't commercial, but it became the underground voice of practical British close-up magic. Each issue was packed with tricks that weren't pipe dreams. There were effects designed to work, tricks you could do at a gig that same night. And here's the thing, a lot of people in this day and age, a lot of people in 2025, they look back at the 80s as this glorious moment of close-up magic where everything that came out was incredible and everything was practical. That wasn't actually the case. I got into magic at around about the late 80s, and I remember sending off to catalogues for tricks, and they looked amazing in catalogues, and when they came through to your door a week or so later, it was just completely unusable crap. You didn't get that from Stephen at all. The stuff in Spellbinder was designed to work. You could perform it. It would work. And Spellbinder became a creative hub for magicians who performed in pubs, restaurants, and walk around in venues. And Tucker's own contributions were some of the very best. Now, Spellbinder ended in April 2084. And by the time it ended, it had united an entire generation of creators. It's no exaggeration to say that Spellbinder changed the direction of British close-up magic. And what can we learn from this? Well, here's the really important point that you can learn from Stephen Tucker. If no one gives you a platform, build your own. Stephen Tucker didn't wait for permission. He created one of the most influential magic publications of his era. It would have been very difficult for him to do. It would have been a big risk to do something like this. Remember, we're talking back in the 80s when you didn't have the facilities and the resources that you have now. But building that platform made his brand, really. It made people sit up and pay attention. Everybody all over the world knew who Stephen Tucker was. So the lesson is, if no one gives you a platform, build your own. You want to be a huge star in the magic industry, in the magic community? Then actually go out and make your own brand. Don't wait for somebody to give you a shot. Don't wait for somebody like Illusionist or Penguin Magic or Murphy's Magic to come knocking on your door and tell you that they want you to work with them and they want to produce your trick. Don't wait for that. Be so good that they can't ignore you. Go out and build a brand. Knock down doors. Everyone knows I'm a wrestling fan. We'll use some John Cena logic here. Hustle, loyalty, respect. Go out and hustle. Go out and actually make things happen. Don't be the person that watches things happen. And now more than ever, it's easy to do that. You're watching magic TV. That's a brand that I created on YouTube. Nobody handed me the keys to Magic TV. Nobody told me to set up a YouTube channel. Nobody said to me to do this. I decided to do it off my own back. I built a brand up around me based on creating content on YouTube. There's so many different ways that you can make your own platform now. There's so many different ways you can build your own brand now. There's so many different ways you can influence, dictate the direction of your digital footprint. But you have to get up your arse and make it happen. That's what Stephen Tucker did back in 1981, and he didn't have the resources that we all have now because of the internet. Okay, so let's talk about chapter 3. We'll call this the creative boom. Now, after Spellbinder, Tucker went into overdrive. He wrote books like Cardinal Sins, Cardiac Peacemakers, Cardiac Arrest, the Gemini book, Thought Waves. I could go on forever. He released trick after trick after trick. His ideas were simple yet powerful, designed for working magicians. You would see him everywhere, lecturing all over the world. You'd see him attending conventions all over the world. He was literally everywhere in an era where it was very difficult to be everywhere. Think about it these days. It's very difficult to be everywhere because of the internet. That wasn't the case back in the 80s. But he became known, he built a brand and became known for clarity, structure, and smart construction. Alpha to Omega is one of the greatest tricks of all time. Multi-phase prediction routine that became a classic. It's recently been re-released by Big Blind Media, and they've brought an ESP version out, but it was around years before. The missing link, 2 cards, link and unlink in a flash. Blind Faith is a Monty-style routine with a kicker. And look, I could go on and on and on. I could sit here for hours talking to you about the different Stephen Tucker decks. I can tell you that the Lazarus deck is one of the greatest rising card decks of all time and doesn't require electronics, doesn't require thread, doesn't require batteries. I could talk to you about all of this stuff, but take my word for it, Stephen Tucker is a creative genius. And by the mid-1980s, Tucker was considered one of the most creative minds in Magic. And you know what? And by the mid-1980s, Harry Lorraine recognized that by giving him 2 one-man issues of Apocalypse, a rare honor reserved for the very best. Now, Apocalypse is a magazine that was published by Harry Lorraine. It ran for years. You can actually get the completed sort of Apocalypse in various different volumes if you want to, and you can go and see that. It's a great resource, but very few people got a one-man issue, let alone 2 one-man issues, and it shows how his brand had been built. He shows how everybody knew who he was. That a magazine being published in New York in America is having this British magician do 2 one-man issues. It says everything. He also at the same time competed across the UK, won multiple awards for close-up and stand-up magic. He was showing he wasn't just a creator, he wasn't just a publisher, but he was a performer as well. And this all culminated in an appearance on the Paul Daniels Magic Show from 1994, which you can go and still check out online if you want to. He'd gone from photocopying magazines in his living room to performing on national television. So what can we learn from this? Well, lesson number 3 is dominate one niche. When you go deep instead of wide, you end up defining the field itself. I talk about this all the time. If you're a person who wants to become well-known within the magic community, or you're somebody who wants to become a really successful magician, the most important thing is that you niche down. Niching down is so important. Find that niche that you can absolutely dominate. It's the reason I set up an illusion act years ago, because I realized there were very few illusion acts out there. I did an interview very recently with Richard Young from Young and Strange, and he said the biggest thing that he would do if he was new into magic right now is set up an illusion act, because there's very few illusion acts out there and there's a demand for that work. Dominate one niche. It's absolutely what Stephen Tucker did. Okay, so we're on to chapter number 4. We'll call this the editor, because you see, around 1994-5, Stephen Tucker took on a new challenge: editor. He became the editor of The Budget, the official magazine of the British Ring 25 of the IBM. Now, for anybody who's gone to see the IBM conventions recently in the UK, specifically the British Ring IBM conventions, you'll see that it's not as big as many other conventions that take place in the UK. And that wasn't always the case. These conventions used to be absolutely massive, and becoming an editor of the budget was a big deal. And he stayed in that role for 15 years. He also served as an editor for the Pull Bar for several years. Pabula, sorry, for several years. I always say that wrong. And that was a magazine that previously featured greats like Fred Robinson and Walt Leeds. For a decade and a half, Stephen Tucker quietly shaped what British magicians read every single month. He was the one choosing what ideas made it to print. Editing magic publications isn't glamorous work. It's deadlines, it's layouts, and it's late nights. But he did it because he loved the art and he wanted to keep it thriving. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know Stephen Tucker personally. I met him several times at magic conventions, and I spoke to him in the same way that a customer would speak to somebody at a dealer booth, but I didn't know Stephen Tucker at all. But from everything I've read about him, everything I've seen about him, and the research I've done to put this video together, I can tell that he absolutely loved magic. Honestly, the stuff that he did, the work that he took on, you would only do that if you loved magic. And his love of magic opened up many, many doors that would never have opened up if he wasn't putting himself out there. And that brings us to lesson number 4. The person behind the curtain often changes the show more than the star on stage. What do I mean by that? Well, if you can position yourself into a position where you're part of what's happening behind the scenes, you're going to be able to catapult yourself into a position where your star power and your brand is so much bigger than somebody that's just going out there and performing. And that's absolutely what Stephen Tucker did. It was hard work. He did it, I think, for the love of it, but it made his brand, it made who he was, become even bigger than ever before. Right, let's go into chapter number 5, the historian and the dealer. By the early 2000s, Tucker had reinvented himself yet again. He became a historian and a dealer. In 2005, he published Bob Austin's A Lifetime of Magical Inventions, a 183-page book celebrating his mentor and friend, and it's still considered one of the best biographies ever written about a magician. Alakazam hold the rights to the Bob Austin book, and you can still get it now if you want to. It's got some incredible material in it. Now, at the same time, Stephen Tucker launched his website, stephentuckermagic.co.uk, where he sold his effects directly. Now, he'd already been at conventions and sold his magic at conventions and sold his magic at lectures and so on and so forth, but this is where he actually started the magic. He started selling magic directly online. He created, manufactured, and shipped them himself. And as far as I can see, back then, he didn't really put stuff through wholesalers or didn't put stuff through Murphy's. If you wanted a Stephen Tucker trick, you had to go to stephentuckermagic.co.uk. Now, a Magic Week article from November the 20th, 2010 paints a clear picture. He was still editing the budget in 2010. He was still lecturing internationally until in 2010. And he was still running his dealer line. In fact, the Magic Week article specifically said that the WoW wallet was one of his best sellers. Now, that site stayed live through till around about 2013. And during that time, he remained active and a fully respected voice in the community. And so the next lesson we can learn from that is you don't need a massive platform. Sometimes success is just serving your audience really well. There's magicians in this community that will literally just sell directly through their own website, and they will sell directly through to their fan base. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've talked in the past about how I work with big companies, and the reason I do is because I haven't got the time or the energy or the inclination to do everything myself. But for magicians that have got that energy, for magicians that have got that time and that inclination, it can be a great way of becoming very, very successful. Because literally, if you want to become a successful creator in this industry and you're bringing tricks out that people want to buy, and the only place that people can buy them is directly from you, well, now you're going to attract a bunch of people. As long as the tricks are good and as long as word of mouth kicks in, you're going to attract a whole bunch of people. So sometimes if you want to be a creator in magic, you might want to consider not going through big companies and making your magic, more, I don't know, kind of more sought after in a way, making it so that you can't get it everywhere, so that people have to go directly to you. Okay, so now let's talk about the fade out, chapter 6. You see, quietly, things started to slow down. In 2014, Big Blind Media released a new edition of Alpha to Omega, and some other Stephen Tucker tricks were available from various different magic shops. You can see a bunch of them being listed on Penguin Magic and Vanishing Ink. So he was still present, but he was no longer participating. And I tried to find out exactly when his disappearance from Magic happened. I'm not really 100% too sure. The one thing that I could find out is there was a post on the Magic Cafe in February 2015. And the post was made by a person who was asking a question: does anyone know what happened to Stephen Tucker magic.co.uk? It's down. And there was no reply. It never went back up again. So we know around about February 2015 was when the website was taken down. I imagine that that's around about the same time that Stephen kind of disappeared from the community. That's the moment his online presence and essentially his public career ended. The site never came back. And here's the thing, sometimes an era doesn't end with applause. Sometimes it just ends with a broken link. Somebody who was so prolific for so long literally disappeared just like that. After 2015, there was nothing. No new books, no interviews, no convention appearances, nothing. He vanished from the community he helped build. The only thing I could find is in 2024, there was a post on the Genie Forum about something else, something completely different. And Stephen Tucker's name came up, and there was a reply: Stephen Tucker, brackets, now out of Magic. There was no drama, no sadness, no scandal, just a factual statement. After 40 years of writing, editing, and creating, he had quietly retired from the art. And the interesting thing is he'd not made a big fuss of it at all. Which brings us to the next lesson. Disappearing can sometimes be the cleanest ending of all. Sometimes, I relate this back to wrestling. There's a wrestler called Ric Flair, who was considered one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and he had an amazing retirement match at WrestleMania against Shawn Michaels. And everyone said it was the perfect send-off. But Ric Flair couldn't disappear. He kept coming back again and again and again. He kept tarnishing his legacy by continually trying to appear in a wrestling ring when it was way past the fact that he should have been there. And a lot of people said it would have been better if he'd ridden into the sunset and nobody had ever heard from him again. And maybe that's what Stephen Tucker decided to do. I don't know. But he disappeared. Okay, so next chapter, the legacy. Stephen Tucker's influence is still everywhere. If you've ever performed a packet trick with a built-in structure, you're walking a path he paved. He taught magicians that simple can be smart and practical can be profound. As the editor of the Budget and the Pabula, he gave countless magicians their first publication credit. As a creator, he designed a blueprint for the modern packet trick. His books continue to inspire students of structure and method. Legacy isn't about fame. It's about building something that still is taught long after you've stopped talking. And Stephen Tucker's legacy is that he is still everywhere and always will be. But here's what I keep thinking about. For someone who so clearly loved magic, and trust me, there's no way he could have done what he'd done for 40 years if he didn't love magic. Working a dealer booth is one of the hardest things you can do. I tell you this honestly from first hand. He clearly loved magic. So the thing I keep thinking about is, why walk away completely? Why not a final convention, a goodbye note, a farewell lecture tour? It's almost unheard of. I can't really think of any other magicians that have literally just disappeared without fanfare, without saying anything. They literally disappeared, never to be seen again. I've never seen that, really. But maybe if we look closer, we can see why. And this is purely speculation on my part. Like I say, I've tried my hardest. I can't find or get hold of Stephen Tucker. But Tucker came from a different world. A pre-digital generation that valued study over spectacle. He built his reputation in print, not online. When the internet took over and magic became about speed and self-promotion, maybe he realized it wasn't his kind of scene anymore. And remember, he wasn't a showman. He was a craftsman, a quiet worker and a thinker. He was a publisher. And for a man like that, silence might have felt like the most natural retirement of all. After 4 decades of non-stop creation, he might have simply wanted peace. He might have been tired. He might have been fed up about creating magic. Maybe he became disillusioned with the magic community. It was very much changing at the time that he disappeared. It came for a while less about a community. I don't know, but maybe the final lesson that we need to learn is it wasn't about magic at all, but about knowing where to stop. You see, Stephen Tucker's disappearance is almost poetic. He spent his whole career simplifying tricks, removing every unnecessary beat, refining routines until nothing extra remained. He spent his entire career taking other people's tricks and publishing them, making legacies for other creators. And in the end, he refined his own story in the same way. No clutter, no noise, just the work, and then a fade to black. He didn't die. He didn't fall out with anyone. There's no horrible court case. There's no scandal. There's nothing. He simply just closed the book and disappeared. And maybe, just maybe, that's why his story resonates so much. Because in an age of constant noise, he chose silence. And somehow, that speaks louder than ever. Maybe the greatest vanish he ever performed was himself. One last vanish, executed perfectly. So there you go, guys. That's the video. The rise, the reign, and the disappearance of Stephen Tucker. Honestly, I'm still upset at the fact that he just disappeared one day and rode into the sunset. Stephen Tucker was one of my favorite creators of all time, and he was a huge part of this industry, and then he just disappeared one day. So now it's over to you. I've got a question for you, and I want you to answer it in the comments down below. Have you got a favorite Stephen Tucker trick? Let me know what it is in the comments down below. Is there, do you know where he is? Maybe you're a friend of Stephen Tucker and you know exactly where he is. I don't know. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. For the love of God, if you think you could organize an interview, that would be amazing. I really want to know what's gone on. I really would. But if we never find out, the bottom line is Stephen Tucker's legacy will live on. And that's probably the most important thing. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back next week with another deep dive, but I want to say thank you for joining me right here on Magic TV. Don't forget, you want to see more videos like this, all you got to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Now, I'm going to be back again tomorrow with another video. Like I say, I'll be back next week with another deep dive. And yeah, one last thing, don't forget to join the Netrix. It's my online streaming platform for magicians. We're just about to drop a massive new bunch of tricks. So make sure you look out for that if you're a Netrix subscriber. Outside of that, I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.